So, hello everyone. Welcome to the series of webinars about performance and software automation. I'm Rodrigo Moutinho, and it's a pleasure to have our special guest here today. She's a Java developer, tech lead, writer, speaker, volunteer on many cool initiatives, has lots of certification. And recently, I had the pleasure to participate in her workshop on our Code One in San Francisco, and it was really awesome. It was like 2 hours. She gave many insights, and she totally changed the way I thought about automating Java projects with Groovy. So welcome, Jeanne Boyarsky. Thank you for being here with us. Hope that I got your name right.
You did. Congratulations.
Thanks. So could you tell us a bit more about your background on software industry?
Sure. I've been a Java developer for over 16 years. I started out working on a web app, and I got promoted to tech lead, architect, software quality lead. And then over time, I realized I was working about half of my time on software automation and DevOps. No one called it DevOps then, but it was the same types of tooling and the same development goals. And then when one of my web app projects ended, I moved over to doing the DevOps work full time. I made sure that I was on a project where DevOps meant coding, because I would not enjoy my project if I wasn't writing code. But for us, DevOps really is development and operations and making sure that you can code things that are going to be reusable to everybody and save everybody time.
Awesome. It's really great to have this moving, because it's also my kind of my next question for you, because today we're going to talk lots about Java, Jenkins, Nexus, CI/CD. But before starting this discussion, I would like to ask you what was your biggest nightmare when you had to do your manual steps and deployments at the beginning of your career? Do you have any of those bad situations that have been passed?
When I was about a year out of college, we were deploying to WebSphere 3 or 3.5, I forget, a long time ago, 16 years ago. But the tech lead of our team was going to India for 3 weeks when I had a whole month of experience, and I had to deploy when she wasn't there. I was terrified because I didn't understand how deployment worked. You ran a magic script, a Unix script, and if it didn't work, you prayed and tinkered with some stuff and hoped you got it to work. So it wasn't like coding where I felt comfortable that if I spent a lot of time on it, I would get somewhere. It felt like a pile of magic. Luckily, nothing went wrong when she was in India, and I was able to deploy using the magic script, but that was something that was scary.
Yeah, I also like to say that this kind of person, the hero developer. So when he just take vacation, there is some bad situation that we need to pass through, like this magical script that you said. For you, what is the importance and the benefits of having like the continuous integration, continuous delivery on our process, daily process development?
Yeah, I noticed the benefit of continuous integration and automated deployment, which was the precursor to CD back when we were still using Ant. At that point, people had a choice of whether to use the Ant build in order to test and package the EAR files or to do it manually. And I remember a day where we had a production problem. My teammate used the Ant build. And I remember asking him why he was using the Ant build because he was in a hurry. And his answer was, well, I don't have time to do it manually. That was the moment where somebody from outside of our team recognized that this automation approach really is saving time and ensuring that we only have to do it once. I also liked it because what you do under pressure is your real process. What you do when you have time is what you'd like your process to be. And the things that you'd like your process to be and aren't really part of your process are the things you ditch in an emergency. So it was nice seeing that the automated build was something that was not thrown out the window.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, this is the kind of thing that when happen, you start to loving automation, because all the stress of doing manual, it's a really bad thing. And on your presentation, Code One, you covered many technology. I will just try to get each one of them and understand the benefits. So let's try to start with the automation server, especially Jenkins that you cover there. So what is an automation server, and what is the importance and benefits of having one of those on the project?
Okay, Jenkins or Bamboo or anything that you're using in that place, like Travis, is the brains of the operation. It's pulling together the other tools that we showed in the demo, Nexus and Sonar, but it's also pulling together anything else you could have. If we had more than 2 hours, we could have shown how you use Jenkins to trigger automated deployment. You can have Jenkins send you emails. You can have Jenkins send information to various visualizations. Maybe you want to have a duck that quacks when the build fails. You can have it do anything. And because Jenkins lets you assemble scripts into your pipeline, you can have it do anything you want. You can have a Unix script, a Groovy script, a Java program. You can call third-party plugins. It's really powerful because you can get it to do anything that you want.
Awesome. You also covered the Nexus, the repository manager. What is this tool and why should we be using it?
Okay, so Nexus is a binary repository. We're all familiar with source repositories, aka GitHub, that we need to have our source code versioned. We want to have our dependencies versioned as well. And when you're working on your home computer, you don't need a binary repository because you just get stuff from Maven Central, which is a binary repository. You need it when you work for a company for a few reasons. One of them is that you don't want to go to Maven Central every time something happens. That's a lot of bandwidth and a lot of load on Maven Central, or Bintray, which are free public services. The second one is you want to have the jars cached remotely, cached locally. Every once in a while, there's a case where something's pulled from the public repo, but you built with it and you need to have a record of that. The third reason is that if you're running any non-trivial operation, you're also building your own binary components and you need a place to publish those so all the teams can use them.
Yeah, and I think maybe the using Jenkins and Nexus should be even more productive when you're doing this automation process, the pipeline and the CI/CD, right?
Mm-hmm. Right, and we use both of those in the Oracle Code One lab.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and you also at the end of the workshop, we don't have any as you said, the 2 hours is like a teeny space to test many things, but you also covered SonarQube. So why we should be using SonarQube on our daily development, and what is the benefits of having this?
SonarQube is telling you about the quality of your software, not about whether your unit test passed. Jenkins is able to tell you that, but more advanced things. So it does a combination of static analysis like PMD and check style and find bugs used to do, but it also tells you about more. It's able to start doing path analysis. It's able to find duplicate code. So it's creating a dashboard that tells you a lot about both your application and holistically other applications. If your application is 90% the same code as another application in your company, that's a problem because it's really the same application. And now you've got all that tech debt cost of keeping these two apps in sync forever. When we did it at Oracle Code One, we didn't expect to get to Sonar. We wanted to have it there as extra credit because you never know when you do a public presentation if you're going to get someone who comes in knowing the material already. And if someone came in who was fluent with using Groovy for Nexus and Jenkins already, it was possible for them to finish the lab within 2 hours. And we wanted to give them something advanced to do. We figured that no one would get there, and we were right. But it was still material that people could read on their own after if they were so moved.
Yeah, it was really awesome. And do you have we covered, you said like the SonarQube just to see like the quality of the code. So you have any extra like plugins that you have in mind to suggest when you're using Jenkins to like test out the code and things like this?
Oh, there's lots of plugins. In Jenkins, everything's a plugin. So you start with the recommended plugins that they give you, but then you start using others as you work. There's going to be a plugin if you're doing continuous deployment to your continuous deployment environment or server or Tomcat or whatever. There's a lot of plugins for various visualizations. There's so many plugins that I use, and I don't even remember their plugins because I've had them installed for so long.
Okay, yeah, it's like kind of automatic thing.
Right. If you've been using, no, seriously though, if you've been using a plugin for 5 years, in your mind it's part of Jenkins and you forget it isn't really built in.
Yeah, exactly. Like the recommended one, when you just install Jenkins without them, you just, what? Where's my Jenkins? Yeah, it's not the real one.
Yeah, but
and
there's
you
a
also,
lot of plugins. Like I know there's a conditional rule plugin that I downloaded a few years ago. Basically, when you're trying to do something, you look around, you start Googling what you're trying to do, and then you learn, oh, there's a plugin that does that.
yeah, there is some session ones. Maybe you can tell more. I think the SSH plugin to make the communication with servers, and I love the history one, because when you just started learning things, you make some crap on the job you can like just back forward.
Right, and that's a
This
perfect example. The history plugin is a perfect example of something that you forget is a plugin, because when you said that, my first reaction was, really? That didn't come with Jenkins?
yeah, I love this one because like 1 year ago when I was just starting with Jenkins, to change something on Jenkins really hard, because you don't know what is the guy before did there, and
Right.
you're
The
just
other
worrying
challenge
about.
in answering questions about what plugins I use is, at work we use Jenkins Enterprise, which comes with additional plugins like the template plugin.
Okay.
And a lot of those I rely on so much as well, without remembering, hey, are those enterprise only? Or are they included with Jenkins? Or are they extra plugins we just got ourselves?
Yeah, right. I also remember the good blog post that you did about the Jenkins certification. Could you tell us about the how was the exam and
Sure. So
some
I've taken
tips?
a number of certifications, Java, Spring. I've written books about Java certification. And when the Jenkins certification was announced, I set as a goal for myself, I was going to try to be one of the first certified people in the world. They had, I forget if it was a day or a week, but they had a short period of time where they were rolling out the initial beta certification. There were almost no materials for it. What CloudBees provided was an outline and between 4 and 10, I forget how many sample questions, but that was it. It wasn't like when you study for the Scrum Cert or the Java Cert, where there's books and resources that you can read up upon. So I had to play with it and sort of make my own materials and my own outline of what I was going to study. I made flashcards. I played a lot in Jenkins, and I took the test. It was interesting that they had both the commercial and the enterprise version of it, so that you could choose which features that you wanted to play with. But what I really liked about the cert is they hadn't emphasized hands-on knowledge. So it's like, well, what happens in this scenario? For example, what happens when you delete an entire folder with jobs in it was a question on mine. Does the folder, including all of the jobs, get deleted? Does the folder get deleted and the jobs stay, in the folder one up from where they are? That sort of thing. And that's something you wouldn't know without extensive playing around in the product.
Yeah, something like scary things, because when this folder goes out, what was the answer?
Right, and you notice I said without playing with, because that's probably not something that you would do at work, although I did manage to do that at work a couple of months ago. So it was nice to know that the jobs do in fact get deleted and I have to go to the history or recreate them. Makes it a little less scary when you do something like that.
Yeah, for sure. Do you have any extra tips for the ones that want to try out this Jenkins certification? Because I think you did the beta one, right? Now
Yeah.
there is a official one. You suggest taking the commercial instead of enterprise, or what is the?
Yeah, so I took the wrong test. I thought I would take the enterprise test because we were using Jenkins Enterprise, but it turned out that the enterprise test had a lot of emphasis on things we didn't use, like having multiple masters. So unless you're actually using all of those enterprise features, I would recommend the community test. Based on the people I saw in the room taking the enterprise test, it was mainly CloudBees employees. So I think the community test is a better one to take. Also with the community one, Jenkins doesn't expire, so you have more time to study for the test. I was continually fiddling with my local enterprise license on my machine to extend the time. But for the community one, download all of the plugins that they say are on the test and play with them a lot, especially the ones you don't use. Just try different things, see what happens, remember what happens. Spend more time studying with your computer playing with Jenkins. I made the mistake of spending a lot of time with flashcards learning things and less time on my actual computer. I made that mistake mainly because I had a lot of time that I was spending in the robotics lab with my high school robotics team, so I had time to do flashcards and I didn't have time to spend a lot of time on my computer, but that was something that made the exam a lot harder, that I didn't have as much hands-on experience with the plugins that I don't use at work, and I didn't know how they behaved in a lot of scenarios.
Okay, awesome. And I think the next question, maybe it's related to Jenkins also, but all of the tools that you use during the workshop, you use Groovy on Jenkins, SonarQube, and Nexus. I never used Groovy on Nexus. It was really good to see this working. So do you think this is the best language to use, or there is other ones that is your favorite language to do this automation, create this automation?
Well, there's no such thing as the best language, because different languages are good for different scenarios. In Sonar, you actually use Java and not Groovy because you're developing the rule plugins on your workstation and packaging them up. So the only piece of Groovy that was really used there was Gradle in order to build the Java plugin. But actually, it might have been Maven because we had to use the plugin that they gave us. But for Nexus and Jenkins, we do use Groovy. Nexus 2 did not support Groovy. Nexus 3 does, which is great. Jenkins has supported Groovy since the dawn, since it was Hudson. The reason that Groovy is a better language than Java on Jenkins is because it's an interpreted language, right? If I use Java, now I have to compile it, I have to run it, I have to have a whole to-do. With Groovy, I don't. I can type stuff into the text area and run it directly. Another reason Groovy is a good language for doing stuff in Jenkins is it has a lot of built-in APIs to do things that are really common when you're doing scripting in the tooling. There's the slurper when you're doing XML or JSON parsing. There's a one-liner to read a file. There's a lot of libraries. There's REST API calls. And Groovy falls back to Java. So if you have teammates who don't know Groovy well or at all, they can write code that's really Java and run it as if it's Groovy. It's certainly not idiomatic Groovy, and it's not the best Groovy you have ever seen, but it does work, and it provides a learning path for someone who knows Java to start learning Groovy while being productive at the same time.
Awesome. And so when you start doing automation things using Jenkins, you already start with Groovy, or you take before some like graphical things, or
right. So it depends on what I'm doing. When I'm automating from within Jenkins or from within Nexus, I'm absolutely using Groovy. When I'm automating from outside of it, just using REST API calls, I'm mainly using Java because our team is the strongest at Java, right? You want to use languages that your team knows well and not use a new language just to be complicated about things. So we use Groovy for the smaller scripts that we're writing that are run within the tool, things like bulk updates or reporting or that type of thing. We use Java to make REST API calls in all of the products we use to write things that are more complicated or interact with each other, aka if we're coming from the outside.
Also, the pipeline things, you mean
the pipelines are written in Groovy. I was thinking about automating external to the jobs themselves, right? Pipelines are Groovy, so you definitely want to be using Groovy for those. And that's so much better than the old style that was a mix of XML and Groovy, because writing Groovy to generate XML isn't the most logical thing on earth. So it's nice that everything's in Groovy now.
Yeah, I was just searching the older way that is like creating a job and making this job start another one, and so on. So you need to know like 6 jobs that is your whole pipeline. And when you see the kind of Groovy thing that you show on your talk, it's like the full one. The pipeline is already there, so easy to see. Even if we are Java developers and don't know about the Groovy, I think it's really easy to see this.
Yeah, and of course the one key is that anything that compiles in Java is going to compile in Groovy. So if you don't know how to do something, you do it in Java and then look it up.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, and last but not least, what is your best advice for those that want to automate their software delivery and avoid this dependence of this hero developer, as you said at the beginning of the interview?
I think it's a process, right? So the first thing is, can you document what the hero developer does? Sit with them a few times, write it down, even if it's just a wiki page or a Word document, get it somewhere. and then start scripting it. If you have time to invest in scripting it, that's great. But if you don't, script it one step at a time, right? So, well, the first thing that we have to do is we have to get the jars out of Nexus. So write the curl command that gets the jar out of Nexus and start with the hero developers documentation on step 2. And if you do that each time, the more times you deploy, the more times you've saved, and eventually you're going to have the whole thing scripted. The other thing is don't let the hero developer touch the keyboard. Right? Once you think you've documented what he or she does, have the hero developer sit and watch someone else do it. It will probably be a frustrating experience, but at least you're finding out, is everything really documented? Is there anything else we need? And you find out about it before the hero developer goes on vacation or worse, leaves, and the people who are left are stuck trying to figure out what to do. But it's not just about the hero developer. Even if you have a process that everyone understands and is well documented, it's still slow and tedious to do things by hand, right? We're developers. Who has time for that? I remember going to an event where they said that the average person spends 40% of their time doing stuff that can be automated. And my teammates and I are looking at each other like, how is that even possible? If you're a developer, wouldn't you solve that problem by automating it? Because 40% of your jobs doing things that are boring and could be automated sounds horrible and like an opportunity to go automate things.
Yeah, I love this tip that you gave, that you need to put the guy that deploy things on the side and do not let him like do the process. So that I think this way you can find lots of like blind spots and when you need where you need to do more things. And do you have any special tools like the ones that have nothing? I always like to suggest vagrants to start doing things, because what I see on my audience is they are scary to put things running or test things on the production server or any other server. So they just don't do this because they don't have a secure way to do so. You suggest like Vagrant, or do you have any other special tools that help?
I work for a bank. We have lots of servers, so there is a legitimate dev server that you can run things on, and people aren't scared to do so. So that's not a problem that I have.
Okay.
And on my personal machine, as you saw from Oracle Code 1, I use Docker when I want to experiment, because then I want to spin stuff up quickly, but it's not that I don't trust it. So I don't need a full-fledged VM. I do have a full-fledged VM for when I need to do something in Windows, but you know, it's enough of a pain to bring it up and do anything. And then I'm using Windows on a Mac and a VM. So ultimately, I don't.
Yeah, I like to test the VM. I know that Docker is far better, but most of the time when you're dealing this, people don't know Docker, and that's why they do things manually. So if you need to learn Docker, but but my CentOS or my Ubuntu, I can do many things with this, and it's different for my production. So when I suggested, okay, maybe I can try. So that's they don't have like a server like you said on the bank where you can like test things out. But yeah. So do you have any final thought? Something that you want to share, to promote?
I think the thing I would want to promote is speakerdeck.com/Boyarsky, which is my last name. I have all the presentations I've given at conferences there, including the one we're talking about now, and including the one about Java 11 and the changes to the release model. Spoiler, if you work for a large company, you want to upgrade Java every 3 years.
I'll make sure to put this link that you said about your deck presentation on the show notes. Also, your books about Java certification, your blog with Scott, right? And there is another the Java Ranch blog, the forum that you run also. So I'll put everything on the show notes.
Awesome.
So thanks a lot, Jeanne, for being here with us. Very good interview. And guys, if you want to know more about software automation, to avoid having a hero developer on your team, subscribe to supportdeveloper.tech to receive my free email course about software automation, and also be notified with this awesome, great content like this interview. And see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.